thus to become the 47th President of the United States. Lots more from here, but let's go back over to Sumi now.
Thanks, Katrina. Yeah, we still have John McConnell with us, a former speechwriter for former President Bush and Vice President Dick Cheney. And I just want to bring you in here as we've been looking at some of these images, of course, waiting for those doors to open at the White House. The other image we've been seeing is all of the lawmakers, past and present, filing into the Capitol. Give us a sense of the inauguration ceremony, the swearing in itself, and just what goes behind preparing a process like that.
Well, I was just watching your feed from the Capitol, and they show the arrival of President Clinton, and of course you'll have the Bushes there, the Clintons, President Obama, and in years past, way past, you had the outgoing president on the platform, but not the former presidents going back in time. But travel has changed, of course, in the modern era, and so it's pretty easy for everybody to get to Washington. And so when you go back to the Kennedy inauguration, you had the Trumans, of course, Eisenhower, the outgoing president. Former President Hoover was going to be there, but because of weather, I guess his plane couldn't land in Washington. And ever since, you've had the former presidents coming. In general, they've not all been at every inauguration, but it's a sign of unity for the country. It's a very good thing that you have the Clintons and Barack Obama and George W. Bush there. As you watch the people coming in, it really does underscore the fact that this is an official event, not a partisan event. I just saw Jim Clyburn, Joe Biden's best friend in the Congress, walking in and taking his place. It's former speakers of the House of both parties are there, and it just is a very fine pageant for the United States. The political divides will be stark in this term, as they always are, but Inauguration Day is very different. And behind the scenes, it's also a new experience compared to the last inauguration. I was there with former Vice President Dan Quayle 4 years ago. He was my first boss, and I went to the event with him, and everyone was wearing face masks, and they were distanced on the platform out there on the west front of the Capitol 4 years ago. The former presidents all came out. They were in separate holding rooms backstage. They came out with their wives with face masks on, and it was a ceremony meant to be, and traditionally always appeared to be, an intimate ceremony. Had a strange dynamic. It just didn't look as comfortable. This one looks much more comfortable, obviously, and even though you're not outside on the west front of the Capitol in that grand vista, it's a special event to have in the Capitol Rotunda. It has a feel of closeness. It's quieter. It has more of a feeling of a service than of a mass ceremony. So although it's unfortunate that people aren't able to gather in great numbers outside to witness this, I think the country will find it a very impressive and touching ceremony in this smaller setting.
Indeed, John. Excuse me. Indeed. Thank you so much, John, for that. Really interesting as we're watching these past and present members of Congress there in the Rotunda getting ready for the inauguration ceremony. There we see allies of President Trump, his incoming National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, and Byron Donalds, an ally of the incoming president as well. We are looking at these images in the Rotunda, where in just a short while, President-elect Donald Trump and his Vice President-elect J.D. Vance will be sworn in. They are currently, Donald Trump and Melania Trump, at the White House wrapping up their tea with Joe Biden and Jill Biden. And from there, they will take a large motorcade over to the Capitol, where we will see this formal swearing-in process, and historic moment marking an historic comeback for Donald Trump as well. We're about to see him sworn in for his second term in office on this day in Washington, D.C., indoors, of course, because of those cold temperatures. So we're watching these images, and stay with us for our continuing coverage of Donald Trump's second inauguration.
President-elect Donald J. Trump.
God spared my life for a reason, and that reason was to save our country.
Hello from Washington on a glorious sunny day, a huge day of history here. I'm Sophie Rayworth at the White House.
And I'm Clive Myrie here at the Capitol building, where in just over an hour's time, Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 47th President of the United States. Now, he's going to tell the nation in his second inaugural address that he returns to the presidency confident and optimistic that we are at the start of a thrilling new era of national success.
Donald Trump is the oldest ever president to be sworn in at 78 years old, beating Joe Biden by just a few months. Here he is, the president-elect, and his wife Melania, who have already attended a short prayer service at St. John's Episcopal Church with their family, a tradition on Inauguration Day that started almost a century ago.
Yeah, this day will be marked throughout by tradition and ceremony, including the taking of tea, would you believe, between the outgoing first couple and the incoming couple, another long-standing ritual on Inauguration Day. Now, that took place at the White House a short time ago, and in the next few minutes or so, we expect the president-elect to leave with Melania in their motorcade heading up Pennsylvania Avenue on its way here to the Capitol building for his swearing in.
Now, what is very different this time is the weather. It is about -7 degrees Celsius, although it does feel a lot warmer than that in the sunshine here today. But an Arctic blast was forecast to hit this city. And at the very last minute, the whole of today's proceedings have had to be moved indoors.
Yes, they'd been planning today's outdoor event since last September, beginning construction of all the outdoor platforms and viewing areas on the west terrace of the Capitol building here. And it was only on Friday, with the forecast of freezing weather, that Donald Trump decided it would be potentially dangerous for the crowds and dignitaries to be standing around for at least an hour. We've got the pictures now of the president-elect and the vice president-elect leaving the White House on their way up Pennsylvania Avenue. They'll be arriving here in just a few minutes for what is a huge day, not just in their lives, but also in the life of this nation and indeed for all of us around the world. The last time an inauguration actually was held indoors was back in 1985, Ronald Reagan. That was shifted because of icy blasts on the day. But one thing that hasn't changed is the date. The official transfer of power has taken place on the 20th of January in the year after an election for almost a century, unless it falls on a Sunday. Today is also Martin Luther King Day, so it's actually a national holiday. So we're waiting for the president-elect to leave, having had tea at the White House. We just saw the Vice President-elect, J.D. Vance, leave on his way here to the Capitol building. Today is also Martin Luther King Day, so it's actually a national holiday. So we're waiting for the president-elect to leave tea at the White House. We just saw the Vice President-elect, J.D. Vance, leave on his way here to the Capitol building.
That both President Biden and the President-elect will exit very shortly. So much history being made here today. Donald Trump, only the second president in the history of the United States who is returning to the White House, having served non-consecutive terms. He is, as I said, also the oldest president to be sworn in. And we saw J.D. Vance leaving a short time ago. He is one of the youngest vice presidents that the United States has ever had, at the age of just 40 years old. Well, as we watch these pictures, I am joined here by our North America editor, Sarah Smith. And, extraordinary images that we're seeing this morning, not least because they are indoors. It was supposed to be held outside on the west terrace of the Capitol building.
Yeah, extremely unusual to see it all happening indoors. But already what we have seen is the peaceful transfer of power taking place from one party to another. It's been really interesting, hasn't it, watching Kamala Harris and her husband Doug Emhoff greeting the Vances very cordially as they travelled to the Capitol. And we have seen President and Jill Biden together with the Trumps, making sure that every single piece of the normal ceremony, all of the normal courtesies that are extended from one administration to the other, from the outgoing administration to the incoming one, are carefully observed, regardless of what your personal feelings might be, regardless of any upset or bitterness at the election result. This administration really carefully wants to make sure that they're seen to be as gracious as possible, to contrast with what happened 4 years ago when Donald Trump didn't take part in any of this and he left the Capitol in something of a huff, insisting that the election had been stolen from him.
It is hard to sort of exaggerate the level of change that is about to hit this country, though, isn't it, with the return of Donald Trump?
Yeah, we are looking at a very bold and a very radical agenda that he's going to bring in, and he's going to make sure he starts it early. I mean, he is planning to sign as many as 100 executive orders, we understand, this afternoon, ushering in great change as fast as possible because he knows he can't run again. He's got 4 years in office. He wants to remake America in that time, and he's going to go about it in a hurry.
We're seeing lots of political leaders arriving. We've got Bill Clinton has arrived already, his wife Hillary. There are also lots of new faces, the likes of the 3 richest men in the world who will be attending today.
Yes, and they were all going to be seated together had this happened outside, and they were going to be in one of the VIP stands. You have got Elon Musk, who is, of course, very, very close to Donald Trump, has been right by his side ever since the election as an advisor. Here we go.
And here they go, the doors open, and we have the President-elect, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden exiting the White House for the last time.
Yes, this is Joe Biden saying goodbye to the White House. He signed a few executive orders himself this morning as his parting act, but that's the last time he will depart there, as he's travelling in the same car, as you can see, with President-elect Trump. So, to be a fly on the wall listening to what they've got to say to each other on their way to the Capitol.
Let's reflect as we watch those pictures, because that is the last time that Joe Biden will leave the White House, on what this is like for him today, his legacy, and also the people who will be thinking, could this have been different if he had perhaps stepped aside sooner?
Yeah, Joe Biden knows that there are a lot of people in his own party, people who are his own most ardent supporters, who are angry because they think that he clung on for too long. If he'd stepped aside earlier, a different candidate could have beaten Donald Trump. I mean, in some ways, Joe Biden's primary task, many would say, was to prevent Donald Trump from getting back into the White House. He is the man who said that Trump is a danger to American democracy, and yet he failed to prevent him being re-elected, and now he has to sit in the car with him and travel to the Capitol to watch Donald Trump being sworn in again as the 47th president, even though he says that this could fray the fabric of American democracy and its institutions.
Sarah Smith, for now, thank you.
We're going to go now to Sumi Somaskanda. She's at the Russell Senate building, not far from the Capitol Rotunda here, where the ceremony is going to take place. We've had some notable arrivals so far for this huge event coming up. Sumi.
That's right, Clive. And as we're watching these images of the motorcade heading towards the Capitol, indeed, you mentioned that Elon Musk has now arrived at the Capitol Rotunda. There you see the images of him arriving there for the ceremony. He joined Donald Trump on stage on Sunday in that massive rally in Capital One Arena. We know that Elon Musk has become not only a very close supporter and funder of Donald Trump, but a close advisor as well on policy. We saw the other dignitaries of the tech world, Clive, have you mentioned as well, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos arriving. And we have now also seen the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, the leadership of the Senate, and the leadership of the House of Representatives all arriving there in the Rotunda as we're waiting for Donald Trump to arrive. And we've also seen the Supreme Court justices. So a room packed with dignitaries, with lawmakers past and present, and we're going to see Donald Trump and Melania Trump as we see that motorcade snake along from the White House to the Capitol. Not a long trip. They'll be there soon for his swearing in.
You usually get to this kind of inauguration the ambassadors of different countries around the world, but actually Donald Trump has sort of reached out to the Chinese leadership, to Javier Milei of Argentina, to Giorgia Meloni of Italy, people who politically are in his camp. And that suggests a different kind of presidency moving forward, potentially.
Indeed, and we saw Javier Milei actually at one of the balls of the weekend mobbed, and Giorgia Meloni as well of Italy, who's been invited. And as you said, ambassadors of a number of countries. But look, Donald Trump is not your traditional president, and he has said that he wants to make sure that the U.S. is strong on the international stage and building alliances with the countries where he says that the U.S. can make strong partnerships and good deals as well. So we're going to see some of that reflected in the first days of his administration. But indeed, Javier Milei is someone who said, Javier Milei of Argentina, that he admires Donald Trump. We've heard that from Giorgia Meloni as well. So leaders who believe that they're like-minded, if you will, also invited to take part in the festivities this weekend. Of course, with the ambassadors as well, you know, with the ceremonies moving indoors, it has been, Clive, a real scramble to find enough spots, enough seats for everyone who was originally invited to attend. And we've been hearing about that from former Republican Congressman Rodney Davis, who was with us here a little bit earlier, who he said was waiting for his ticket until the very last minute. So, of course, some dignitaries were told that they couldn't attend the swearing in the Rotunda and that they would be invited to watch parties or to a box in the Capital One Arena where they're expected, Sophie, to be a little bit later in the day. So it just goes to show you what a scramble it has been to move this entire procession from outdoors, the traditional inauguration, indoors.
So much
Well, there you go. Shots of the motorcade approaching the Capitol building, crowds on the streets there. And what has changed this time round is that normally there would be huge crowds outside. People were expected to gather in huge numbers, big screens, they were all coming here to watch it. But because of the weather and because of it all moving indoors, now people have been redirected to the Capital One Arena, which is just a short distance away. And that is where President Trump, when he becomes president, will go after the inauguration ceremony, and that's where the crowds will see him. But it only holds 20,000 people. So people have been queuing all night so that they can get a glimpse of Donald Trump when he is president. And Gary O'Donoghue is inside the arena for us now.
Yeah, I'm about a mile northwest of the Capitol, inside this Capital One Arena, and it's already probably two-thirds full. As you say, 200,000 tickets were sold for the inauguration. This only has a capacity of 20,000. We understand it was basically a first come, first served. People were queuing from very early on, blocks and blocks down the street in the pitch black. But it's starting to fill up. They're starting to see some of the events on the screens behind me. They've got a pretty long wait. He won't be here for a few hours. They're keeping some seats behind the podium free for dignitaries, I imagine. Maybe even some of those Conservative politicians from Britain who have made their way over here, like Nigel Farage, Suella Braverman, Priti Patel, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, and Liz Truss has been spotted here this weekend. In fancy dress, we've seen an Uncle Sam, we've seen a George. They want to get some refreshment, pretty expensive. Diet Coke and a bottle of water was $17. That's about 13 quid. So it's going to be a pretty expensive day for them. But they will get some theatrics, Sophie, later on, because not only is there a podium here for Donald Trump to speak from, there's also on the stage a desk and a chair and a microphone and a place for a presidential seal. So he's going to do some of that signing of those executive actions, those executive orders on immigration or energy or on wokeness, as he puts it. He's going to do some of that here in front of this huge crowd, and they will love that.
And Gary, give us an idea of the security levels, because after the assassination attempts, the security here, I mean, it is like a fortress, isn't it?
That's about 13 quid. So it's going to be a pretty expensive day for them. But they will get some theatrics, Sophie, later on, because not only is there a podium here. Yeah, I mean, there are 7-foot fences around the Capitol, aren't there? And there's multiple roadblocks, multiple checks. The magnetometers we're all used to, the ones with the Secret Service, a whole list of prohibited items. I mean, you wouldn't think you'd have to write this down, but they do have to write down in America that you cannot bring a firearm in, that you cannot bring a taser in, that you cannot bring mace or pepper spray into an event like this, because people do carry things like that in the United States. So the security is huge. One of the consequences of taking this whole event indoors because of the weather is that it actually makes the organisational thing a lot harder, because they have to change everything at the last minute, but the security a lot easier. You can control the ingress points, as they put it. You can keep people out. You don't have to worry about the open air. It's a more secure environment. So to that extent, the 25,000 members of the security operation, that's National Guard, police, Secret Service, others, that are on duty in Washington, D.C. right now, have got a slightly easier job, perhaps, than they would have had if this had been a traditional inauguration.
All right, Gary, thank you for that. Gary O'Donoghue there. We're going to go to Brian Lanza. He is a former senior advisor to the Trump 2024 campaign, and he was communications director for the transition team. And Brian, you were supposed to be having a front row seat to all of this today, but the reduced numbers means you're not, unfortunately, going to be able to do that. How disappointed are you?
Listen, what God gives you, God also takes away, right? At the end of the day, I'm excited that the president is getting inaugurated today and that he's getting straight to work. But yeah, my family and I are a little bit disappointed we didn't get the seats that we thought. But there are more important things in this world than my seats. I think the executive actions that the president signs is going to be a clear message to the United States and to the world that this man is in charge and he's ready to lead this country in a unified way, and he's ready to lead it forward. And I think that's more important than whatever seat or however close I was going to be. Either way, I knew I was going to be cold, so it's good to be warm here in the studio.
Indeed, it worked out for you. I mean, you're very close to the man himself. I mean, what do you think is going through his mind as he sits next to the current president, about to become the new president, in that motorcade heading here to the Capitol building?
He's thinking about execution. He knows what he needs to do. He knows his mandate. Everybody likes to speak about mandate, but to him it matters. This is a man who, in his first term, he fulfilled nearly every promise he had made. And so knowing him, the way he thinks, the way he operates, and how he's just business for the American people, that ride over there, he's thinking, okay, what's going to happen? I'm going to sign these executive orders. What else can I need to be doing to make sure that the world knows that the new president is now in charge, and it's going to be different. It's not going to be lead from behind as we saw from the last 4 years. It's going to be lean in, and he's thinking about those challenges ahead, and he's thinking that he has the right team in place, and he's thinking execution. And sure, he's next to Joe Biden, and he's thinking that Joe Biden have to make it so difficult at the end with all his flurry of executive orders. But that's politics. At the end of the day, we'll fix all the problems that Joe Biden did at the end, but we'll also fix the problems that have been sustaining in this country for a very long time. And this country wants change, and what you're seeing on television is a representation of that change.
Yeah, not long to go now, Brian. The motorcade has just arrived here at the Capitol building. Thanks very much indeed.
Yeah, arrivals at the Capitol building. The motorcade has just reached its destination. Sarah Smith, our North America editor, is with me now. And as we watch these pictures, Sarah, I mean, this is one of the greatest political comebacks of all time, isn't it?
Isn't
the
it
scale of his
astonishing?
achievement.
Not only was he defeated 4 years ago, he left Washington in shame, in disgrace, essentially, after the January the 6th riot. Today, we expect he's going to pardon quite a number of the people who have been convicted and jailed for their part in that riot. He has been indicted and arrested for several criminal offences. He's been convicted of fraudulent bookkeeping for paying hush money payments to a porn star. He is the first convicted felon who will be sworn in as the President of the United States. But his other legal cases have gone away now that he's won the election. He survived those indictments. He survived 2 assassination attempts to come back, win a bigger victory, and claim a mandate amongst the American people where he won the popular vote. So he feels utterly vindicated and ready to bring in this agenda of really radical change
and
to America.
That is the rotunda. That is where he will take the oath of office. That is also where we saw so much of that violence on January the 6th.
Exactly. We saw his supporters breaking in there. Where they were attacking the police when they got there. Trumpism in America.
Well, we are joined now by the White House press secretary, the former White House press secretary for Donald Trump, well-known face, Sean Spicer, who spent decades working for the Republican Party. And thank you very much for joining us as we watch these images. What do you make of it all?
I love this day. Pomp and circumstance and the traditions of our country are always something that I've admired. And so it's kind of great to see it all come to fruition right now, watching all these people come into the rotunda for this day. I'm probably more excited about what's to come afterwards when the president hits the ground running. I was at the rally with him last night. He's talking about 200 plus executive orders. And you think about it, I think President Biden had, 20. President Trump, the first term, it was just over a handful. This is going to be epic, I think, on day one.
What is going to be different about this term for Donald Trump? How different will it be?
A lot of us were new. We didn't have a relationship with each other, getting to know the process. So I think the 3 things that I think are very different are the people, the process, and the policies. The people are different because they've worked with him. He's familiar with all of them. Remember, so many of the folks that were members of the cabinet last time hadn't met him last, in that first go round. All of these people have a relationship with him, some that go back decades in the case of like Pam Bondi. So he's got a familiarity with them. He knows that they're the people he wants to execute policies on his behalf. He knows the policies that he wants to get done, and he understands the process by which to get it done. And that's a very, very different set of circumstances than we faced coming into office in 2017.
Yeah, Sean, Clive Myrie here. Picking up on that, is there a sense that because there are, you could put it this way, potentially more MAGA crowd people in this inner circle, people who actually believe in the mission in a way that perhaps the first administration, with some of the characters involved in that, were not as deeply involved in the project? Do you think that will make it easier for the new president to execute the policies that he wants to get through?
Yeah, look, I think this goes back to the people last time. He was getting, Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, he met during the transition and then offered him the job. He didn't have a relationship with him. He knows Marco Rubio. He was a competitor against Marco Rubio in 2016. They've known each other for a long time. They've had multiple, countless conversations. So these are the kind of things that and to your point, about the mission. They understand that they're there to execute on the promises that he made to the American people during the campaign. Last time, there was a lot of people, I think, that sort of wanted to execute their own personal agenda, weren't in favor of him or wanted to stop or block him. That's very different this time around.
Very different indeed. I mean, there's going to be a whole flurry of executive orders issued in the next 24, 48 hours. He's made it clear he's going to hit the ground running. This is what his supporters want.
Yeah, I think one of the big things, look, right out of the gate, you're going to see an effort to make sure that the American people know that our border is secure, that he's dealing with the immigration problem, that Congress is going to get that message, that the border and immigration reform is something that Congress is going to have to act on. But he's going to take initial executive actions today that will show the American people that we are going to secure our border, that we are going to take illegal immigration extremely serious. That's going to be huge. Then there's going to be... Look, I after I left my post in the White House. Right now, my goal, I have my own podcast. I love talking every day and supporting President Trump and advancing his policies, but I have no intention of going back full time in the government.
And Sean, you've like to work with. How do you think the relationship with Elon Musk is going to pan out? Because already we're seeing that he has got a very key place in this future administration. He was up there on stage last night. It was just him and Donald Trump. They're both very big, powerful men with big egos. Are they going to be able to avoid falling out?
Well, look, I think they understand and respect each other. President Trump's, there's no question about it. You can see in the way that he interacts with them. I was at the rally with him yesterday. He respects what Elon Musk has built, his success, his intellect, his entrepreneurial spirit. And that's something that, when there's very few people at that level that have been that successful building a company from scratch like Elon Musk. And so the president, there's no question about it, has a tremendous amount of respect for that. And likewise, I think Elon Musk respects Donald Trump's political prowess, as well as probably his success as a businessman. So far, they've been able to keep the band together for quite a while. And as long as, Elon in particular understands that it's President Trump's agenda, not his, I think it's going to work great. And I think our country will benefit from Elon's insights and his, private sector experience.
Well, Sean Spicer, thank you so much for your insights there, and thank you for talking to us this morning.
You bet, guys.
Okay, we just heard Sean Spicer there. We're now going to talk to Katty Kay, who's with me, ex of this parish. It's good to see you.
Still in the parish.
Still in the parish. Still
here, up on a cold roof, another inauguration.
Indeed, the tech bros. We saw pictures of them. They're all together. They're heads of Google, Apple, PayPal, Amazon. What does that tell us about
church?
Yeah.
In church. I mean, that was the extraordinary thing to me, was that at this moment that is this kind of religious ceremony, before the president is sworn into office, who does he choose to have with him? He chooses to have all of those heads of Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, which has kept its distance from Washington for as long as I've lived here, which is a long time, Clive. And now we're seeing almost overnight this switch. I mean, the optimists would say this is the return of the American Gilded Age. Unfettered deregulation, lots of mergers and acquisitions. We're heading in for 4 years of boom time, at a time when America and China are in a battle for supremacy over artificial intelligence. Donald Trump is going to be the person that gives the edge. But it's also, you look at those people, the potentials for conflicts of interests, the jockeying amongst them. You were asking Sean Spicer about Elon Musk there, and talk about big egos. That church was a lot of big egos. Now, how do they all act together? How do they work for America's best interest rather than their own best interest and rather their shareholders' best interest? And it's going to be an administration where a lot of people make an awful lot of money. And the question is going to be, how much corruption is there around this administration? How much conflict of interest is there around this administration? At the same time, potentially, there's an enormous amount of technological advance. What does Congress do with that? How do they regulate that? What do the Europeans do with that? That's the why the world is watching today.
Bill and Hillary Clinton there, just entering the Rotunda building. Inside, a lot of those CEOs, big donors to the Trump campaign, mingling with the politicians as well, and the tech bros. I mean, are we potentially seeing how technology can change the way that the Health and Human Services Secretariat is dealt with, or defense, or, foreign policy?
America spends far too much on its government. It spends far too much money. And if Elon Musk can get this right, the idea of making American government more efficient...
You can see George and Laura Bush entering here as well.
Although no Michelle Obama.
No Michelle Obama, indeed.
She has decided to stay in Hawaii. Better weather.
Way better weather.
One suspects maybe that she decided not to be here for other reasons as well.
But that's something that we've got to remember about today. It is a celebration for everybody in the Trump team and for Republicans, of course, but it's also a public declaration of the peaceful transfer of power. We saw the president and the president-elect travel in the same vehicle to come here. Barack Obama there entering on his own, solo.
Yeah, without her. Joe Biden did not invite Donald Trump and Melania Trump to the White House for tea because he likes Donald Trump. I think it's fair to say that. He invited him there to show respect to the process. Joe Biden's an institutionalist. He invited him there. Barack Obama is there today. George Bush is there today. Bill Clinton is there today, out of respect for the American process and to remind the world that unlike 4 years ago, there will be a peaceful transfer of power, and it's a way of saying we've got this, we're back. It's stable again.
The Apple CEO there, he is also in attendance, part of that coterie of Silicon Valley bigwigs, also here. It's quite a collection here that the president-elect has managed to get together. And everyone wanting to make it clear that they're going to be behind it.
We talked a little bit about the tech side of this, the business advances that could happen under this administration. Donald Trump was also elected in a way to change America culturally. He's spoken about this. Mark Zuckerberg has spoken about this. Elon Musk has spoken about this. We're going to get all of those executive orders today, ending diversity, equity and inclusion efforts in American businesses, in the American government. There's a pushback against the Me Too movement, against the Black Lives Matter movement. And we're seeing a swing. America swings back. Ronald Reagan in the 1980s was a pushback against the civil rights movement. We don't know how long the pushback will last, but this is definitely a moment where you've got American business and American politicians in the MAGA movement saying, okay, that's done. Enough with the wokery. We heard Mark Zuckerberg say we need more masculine energy in American business. You look around that room, that's what people are talking about. That's what's exciting American businesses and MAGA supporters today.
RFK Jr. there on screen, Elon Musk there chatting with some of the big donors to the
Elon Musk,
Trump
the biggest
campaign.
donor of all.
Indeed. Some of the, 3 or 4 of the richest men on earth are in that room.
Yeah, and they want to get close to Donald Trump. Elon Musk has $10 billion worth of contracts with the American government. It serves him extremely well to have that close relationship. Jeff Bezos is there because he's trying to catch up with Elon Musk to get those American government contracts, which are worth billions of dollars. That's why they are there. But for the rest of the world watching this, who is really in control of this government? Where is the power center in America right now? And who do you have to cozy up to? Who do you have to donate money to in order to get your country's and your industry's voices heard?
Yeah, Mark Zuckerberg there, also on the screen to the left. But Cathy, thank you.
Well, let's just give you an idea of what is going to be happening in the next sort of 45 minutes or so. The first to be sworn in will be the Vice President, J.D. Vance, and the aim is that Donald Trump should be sworn in as the 47th President of the United States at 11:47 US time. So 45 minutes to go until he becomes president for the second time. And Sarah, we're watching his family have just started arriving. We saw Eric Trump's wife, Lara Trump, arrive a moment ago. It is an extraordinary array of people. This is the ceremony, the formality. But at midday, he's really going to start getting down to business, isn't he? Because he's already giving us quite a stark idea of the sort of things that he's going to carry out in these 100 or so executive orders.
Yeah, midday he has the power to start signing these executive orders, and after he has made his inaugural remarks, he will go to the Capital One Arena where his supporters are waiting for him. And as Gary was telling us, there's a desk set up there for him to start signing these orders. And they will cover some of the biggest promises he made on the campaign. On immigration, he wants to end birthright citizenship. Just because you're born in America doesn't mean you would be a citizen anymore. And declare a national emergency on the border. That would mean he can send troops to the border to stop people coming across.
And here are the justices, yes, the Supreme Court justices, and two of them are the people who will swear in both J.D. Vance and the President, the Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who are going to be doing that and reading the oath with J.D. Vance and the President.
All of these justices will be very important during this administration because once President Trump has signed all of these executive orders, some of them will be challenged legally and could end up being ruled on by the Supreme Court, where there is a Conservative majority of 9-6, thanks to some of the appointments Donald Trump made the last time he was president. They've almost always ruled in Donald Trump's favour when a case has come before them. So he will be expecting them to try and uphold some of the things that he does as president.
And he's saying that he wants to do this. This is a sort of shock and awe tactic today, isn't it? We are going to see so many executive orders that he will sign.
Absolutely, not just immigration, on energy. He will sign things allowing people to start drilling for oil across the Alaska and the Arctic National Wildlife Reserve, all kinds of other things to try and increase energy production, and also restoring sanity, he says he's going to do. That would be ending these diversity and inclusion rules and laws that there are within the government. He says it will go back to appointments being made on merit, but also, crucially, he will decree that there are two sexes in America, men and women, and that these are not changeable. That will do things like deny trans athletes taking part in women's sports, but could have an impact right across society.
I heard a Republican strategist yesterday saying, in America we are tired of being woke and broke. But that's really, he fought that on that for his campaign.
Yes, certainly. I mean, the economy was what swung it for most voters, who really do genuinely believe that they will be better off under Donald Trump. Let's see how long it takes for him to deliver that.
Although all he's saying today is we're going to bring the prices down. He's not giving many details on what he's going to be doing on that.
No, he's going to sign an order against inflation, but that's not necessarily going to bring inflation down in any regard. But he can deliver on the anti-woke agenda almost immediately. And the more actions he takes on that, the more he'll keep his base happy, and perhaps the longer they will give him to try and bring prices down.
So that they are gathering. It's expected to begin in just a few minutes' time. Faces from right across the political spectrum there. Cabinet nominees. We've seen Marco Rubio. We've seen there's Mark Zuckerberg in there from Meta. We've seen Pete Hegseth, who's Trump's nominee for defense, and that is what he will do immediately after the swearing of the oath. He will go into the president's room. There's a signing ceremony, and he is going to officially name his nominees. Now, here are the Trump children, the 5 Trump children. The tallest at the back, the youngest, Barron Trump. But we've got Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, Ivanka Trump, and Tiffany Trump, who are all here with their families, their children. What role will they be playing in this new administration? Ivanka was very prominent last time.
She was. She and her husband, Jared Kushner, were both very closely involved, and they've taken a step back now. They took almost no part in the campaign whatsoever and don't want to be in the White House. Eric Trump largely runs the Trump businesses, so is likely to be less involved in politics. Eric, though, was a big campaign advisor and is clearly extremely interested in politics, very close to J.D. Vance. So he will doubtless be working with him and trying to make sure that his voice is heard within this administration.
And Barron Trump, he was 10 last time he attended the inauguration ceremony for his father. He's now grown somewhat. He's now 6'7", I think he is.
6'9", I think.
6'9", and he's 18 years old, living in New York, so he's going to be splitting his time between here and New York. But he did play a part in the campaign, didn't he?
Yeah, he's a student at New York University now, so yeah, presumably he'll be in New York most of the time during term. He was a big advisor on social media strategy. He was the one who persuaded Donald Trump to speak to a number of prominent right-wing podcasters and also to go on TikTok. It's largely by his influence, it would appear, that Donald Trump is going to overturn the ban on TikTok in the United States, because he thinks it was politically useful, and it was Barron who turned him onto that.
There is actually going to be one Democrat speaking at what is essentially a Republican event, I suppose. Amy Klobuchar, Senator. She is the head of the bipartisan inaugural committee, again trying to get across the important fact that this is a peaceful transfer of power, and also what democracies should be doing. She will actually be kicking off the proceedings once the marching band has finished playing at the top of the event here, which should be getting underway in the next few minutes. They're running a little bit late, we understand. But there you go, the head of Apple there, Tim Cook, taking up his seat. I also actually saw the head of FIFA, Gianni Fantini, also in the crowd there. The World Cup is actually coming to the Americas, so that perhaps explains his presence here at this event. The band is striking up there. We're going to go to Sumi Somaskanda, my colleague who's at the Russell Building, not far from where this event is taking place. Sumi, it looks as if pretty much everyone has arrived who should have arrived.
Indeed, Clive, and this was a coveted spot to get in the rotunda as they moved the ceremonies from outside to inside. People battling for spots, of course. We're seeing Laura Trump entering now, the wife of Eric Trump, and also Jared Kushner entering there. Now, Laura Trump, of course, for some time was the chair of the Republican National Committee. There was some speculation after she left that role that she could possibly run for an open Senate seat in Florida, the one that was left absent by Marco Rubio, of course, becoming Donald Trump's pick for Secretary of State. Jared Kushner, of course, played a large role, Clive, as you know, in the first term for Donald Trump. You see him here now leaning over and speaking to, looks like Jeff Bezos there, and also Sundar Pichai as well, CEO of Google. So he is here taking a spot there in the front row, but just goes to show Mark Zuckerberg right behind him as well, just show the concentration of power, if you will, right there in those rows. The Donald Trump family and, of course, the titans of the tech industry. And we see RFK Jr. just a few rows back as well. Some of those Trump cabinet picks. Interesting, we saw his incoming national security advisor a short while ago getting up to take pictures. This is, for them as well, an extremely historic moment. And this is a bipartisan event. Let's listen in.
Ladies and gentlemen, former vice presidents, the Honorable Dan Quayle, accompanied by Mrs. Marilyn Quayle, and the Honorable Michael Pence.
icyo adashaka ni abatarizi ajyayo bacengera cyane umuntu uzajya ujya agiye kwiga
Ladies and gentlemen, the 42nd President of the United States, the Honorable William J. Clinton, accompanied by the Honorable Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Munyi.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 43rd President of the United States, the Honorable George W. Bush, accompanied by Mrs. Laura Bush. Ladies and gentlemen, the 44th President of the United States, the Honorable Barack H. Obama.